And Coulter, how you doing?
Fantastic. How are you, Mark Simone?
Kind of like a zombie. I was watching these Barr hearings for like 8 hours, and now more today. Who could talk to this guy for 8 hours?
Oh, I'm glad somebody's watching those.
I mean, basically, he said there's no collusion. I read the whole thing. There's no collusion. To take 8 seconds. What's 8 hours?
No, I know, and I'm really happy Barr is the Attorney General. This is, at this point, perhaps the only member of the Trump administration I support. I admire, including the president. No, he's very smart, and I don't know if you remember one set of hearings involving Bill Barr I did watch for his nomination hearings. And, you know, he's friends with Robert Mueller. I was not disturbed by that because I'm familiar with Barr's work and people who have worked for him. He's very, very smart, very good, and there are a limited number of Republican attorneys in Washington. So, yeah, of course he gets together with Robert Mueller. But the idea that this conspiracy theory that the left has come up with, that Barr is lying about what's in the report, is so preposterous. I mean, you think Robert Mueller, if he had produced a report showing that there was collusion and there was obstruction of justice, he'd let the Attorney General go out and lie about it for 3 weeks without making a peep? No, these are colleagues, they're smart people. I mean, the one thing I will say very strongly against Mueller are the prosecutors he hired. They're the ones who are leaking this business about, no, we did too fine stuff. He's lying. Yeah, I mean, it really is outrageous. I list them in very briefly in Resistance is Futile, the backgrounds of the, I don't know, dozen prosecutors he hired. And they were all just hardcore, pretty much all of them, hardcore left-wing shills. None of them were registered Republicans. The majority, of course, they were either registered Democrat or not registered, had given massive donations to Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, others like that. Now, I know lawyers tend to be liberal, but to not have one Republican on your prosecuting team. So that's obviously what's happening. Mueller's the guy in charge. He writes the top-line conclusions and then lets the kids, write in their own little, well, this looked bad. I mean, I'm just guessing this is what it is, but they're the ones who are obviously leaking to the press saying, no, it was much worse than what Barr is saying.
And actually,
I think that's what's going on.
There's no Mueller prosecutors saying that. The New York Times admits they don't have any of them. They claim they have friends of theirs who are the third hand getting this, so we don't know. And remember, there was one time...
No, it's definitely the prosecutors. They're being protected by the Times.
Oh, okay. But there was one time that somebody said Mueller had done something where he wasn't true. Remember, this is months ago. Mueller immediately put out a statement saying this report is not true.
Yes.
So if Barr was lying about anything, Mueller would immediately put out a statement.
And particularly lying in the way the New York Times and Rachel Maddow dearly hope he is quote lying, that his statement about the Mueller report is completely the opposite. No, there's going to be collusion there's going to be obstruction of justice. And just one other quick legal point. The difficulty of obstruction of justice for any of the things Mueller and the New York Times have been investigating is that all of the actions were powers of the presidency. So, for example, that can't. It could be obstruction, but there has to be some underlying legal violation. So a president, for example, the most obvious one is president has the power of the pardon. Could that be obstruction of justice, pardoning someone? Well, in the abstract, no. But if Trump shoots Jared Kushner and then asks Steve Bannon to take the fall, promising him a pardon, that would be using a pardon as obstruction of justice. But unless there's an underlying, some sort of legal violation, there's no obstruction of justice. He's allowed to issue pardons. He's allowed to fire people, such as James Comey. He's allowed to say, call off this investigation. He could have done that anytime. He's the president. Obama did it. Clinton did it. I assume Bush did it. It's all in Resistance is Futile. So if there's no underlying crime associated, there's no collusion, then there's no obstruction, just
No.
almost by definition at that point.
The first step of any cover-up is you must have something to cover up.
Exactly. No, that's a very simple way of putting it. Now, it may be that there can be an investigation into something, and you're obstructing an investigation, even though you didn't do anything wrong. But come on, it's the President of the United States. We're not getting down to that level. That's not what was happening.
Hey, you see this Anita Lowy? She's a representative from New York.
One of my favorites. I think she should be on TV more.
What? She looks so lost and confused. And she said to Barr, I find it very suspicious that you can take a 400-page report and 2 days later have a conclusion. How is that possible? I assume if you've been an attorney general for years, you could do that, probably in 2 hours if you had to.
Well, I will remind you, whenever there's a landmark Supreme Court decision, discovering a right to gay marriage in the Constitution, for example, the decision in Bush v. Gore, those are generally 400-page opinions, maybe not 400 pages, but including all the dissents and concurrences. And bam, as soon as it is released, you have, I assume, teams of lawyers going through them at news networks, and they're announcing what the conclusion is, what the concurrence said, and what the dissent said. I mean, these news organizations themselves have to do that. Bill Barr has the entire Department of Justice working for him. I think they can do it pretty quickly. So can we get to something? I was happy to see you tweeted about this too.
Oh, good.
It's been driving me bananas,
What?
and you know I've been tough on the president, but this was perhaps his greatest moment as president. That was his response to Charlottesville, which is in Chapter 2 of Resistance.
Yes, he never said there's good people on the Nazi side.
Oh, my gosh, this is the lie that will not die, Mark Simone. Needless to say, I read through in great detail his every statement on the subject, and no, of course he never said Nazis and racists were good people. He expressly talked about the people who were coming there because they didn't want statues torn down. Yeah. People like me, people like probably a lot of people listening to this radio station, since then, and who ended up being right, since Charlottesville, not only Confederate plaques, monuments, memorial ponds, not only have those been pulled down throughout the nation, there were 2 statues of Columbus, Christopher Columbus, here in New York that have been defaced. One Christopher Columbus statue in New York was decapitated, and his head was dumped in a garbage nearby. At University of Virginia, founded by Thomas Jefferson, they have a bust of Thomas Jefferson. That has to remain covered because it's getting defaced all the time.
Well, Columbus was an illegal alien.
He was not.
Well, of course he was.
The discoverer of this wonderful country.
Oh, okay.
Or continent, technically.
Well, I hate to say we're out of time, but everybody check into that. He never said it about the Nazis. And if you see the undoctored video, a reporter even says, well, wait a minute, are you not referring to those Nazis? He goes, of course not. So he made it real clear he was talking about people that didn't think you should tear down all the statues. But
over and over and over again, he said it.
And you have this in Resistance is Futile in the book.
Yes. All his quotes. The press questions were so outrageous. They were things like, why do Nazis like you? Did anybody ever ask Obama why the shooter of those 5 cops in Dallas liked him?
Yeah. Get the book, Resistance is Futile. It's got a great section on this, and you'll love this book. Resistance is Futile. It's Ann Coulter's latest bestseller. A new column comes out tonight. Go to anncoulter.com, and you can get everything there. And Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us.
Good to talk to you, Mark. Bye-bye.